This is Take 5 with JK Strategies.
Welcome, friends of Take 5. This is Jack Calvertinis. This is our chance to talk to leaders in policy and business and communications. And today we have someone who encompasses all three, Licy to Canto. Licy, thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Great to see you, Jack.
I was thinking about your amazing career. You started, your time in Washington working for Senator Ted Kennedy, and you've worked at several very important patient healthcare organizations here in town, and now you're managing director of the Washington office for APCO Worldwide.
Yes, I'm very excited to have this role and this time. And as you mentioned, I started my career in Washington, D.C., working with one of the greatest, I think, most forceful leaders in our country, and working in bipartisan ways for all the things that I know so many of us care about. And so it's been a great journey to get to here today.
Speaking of him and bipartisan, one of my interesting memories from my time in the Bush administration was a meeting that former HHS Secretary Mike Leavitt had talking about health care, and had both then Governor Romney and Senator Kennedy at HHS for a meeting, really making the case for some changes that Massachusetts would then go on to make. And it was one of the most fascinating meetings that I've ever been in. And no sharp elbows, no partisanship, just all trying to find solutions.
It was a great moment where leaders like Senator Romney, then Governor Romney, I'm from Boston, so I know him and the work that he's done there, and certainly with Secretary Leavitt and Senator Kennedy, and so many around that time who came together to really forge a solution to try to address some of our healthcare issues. And so that's a great memory. So many there, and something I hope we can continue to do now in our time here in Washington, D.C., is find that opportunity to come together and tackle the greatest challenges that we have, but do it in a way that's reflective of all views.
Well, today we're going to talk about returning to the workplace. I can't believe we're still talking about it, because when you really look back, there were some articles about it all the way back in April of 2020. And so we've been talking about it through 2020 and through the time of vaccinations and mandates in 2021. And here we are in March 2022. So I look forward to talking to that about you. But speaking of March, here we are in March Madness.
That's right.
And I know that you are a proud Duke fan.
I am. I don't know if that I can say that out loud, but yes, proud Duke Blue Devil.
And, I went to Wake Forest, but my wife, my sister, and now my son currently at Duke. And so just give me your thoughts with, Coach K, this being his last year, and them about to play tonight. Just your thoughts about Duke basketball and sort of, lessons that we can learn from them.
Sure. Well, in my view, at least, the Duke basketball program is one of the greatest of all times. And I think Coach K is certainly one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. I was very fortunate to go to Duke at a time when we won our first basketball NCAA tournament, and then our second with Christian Laettner and Grant Hill and Bobby Hurley, and to be there, and also to have time with Coach K, who's very engaging, and of course the namesake of the tents that are out there. I don't know if you saw the Wall Street Journal article just before the start of the ACC, and it said that this is the most expensive property now in America, the Krzyzewskiville, where
Yes.
the students
Yes.
camp out before the game. It reminded me of my times at that time. But he's done an incredible job to really lift up some incredible leaders over his career. There are so many. And of course, he's written a lot about that. But I think we get to see that reflection of his leadership and his coaching style and his mentorship with our young men displayed over his entire career. It's sad, of course, to see him go, but all things have to come to an end at some point. And I certainly think in this March Madness, Duke, like so many other great teams, Gonzaga and Purdue and with Arizona and so many others, have a great chance to win. Yeah. And I think while Duke is going to have to work hard to try to, I still think they have a chance to win. Coach K is at his best when he inspires the youngest of his team, and 3 of the starting players are freshmen. And so when we think about his workplace, as we get into this conversation, being able to inspire all of our staff, of our team, as he is, in order to overcome what, in this case, will be really tough odds with these young players playing against players who have deep experience and have been there a long time. That's what he's able to do. And I think great leaders do a wonderful job when they inspire the very youngest of them to rise above their capabilities. And so I'm looking forward to tonight. I'm looking forward to the tournament. Thanks for having that question.
Yes, no, very well said. And as someone who has come around myself to appreciating Duke and really appreciating him, I once read at least a portion of his biography, and he talked about when he was a young man, he started a basketball league, went to the head of the Catholic Athletic League, I think, and said, we don't have a basketball team in league, and can I help to organize that at a very young age? I mean, what kid does that? So just that leadership skill, from a very early age. Let's talk a little bit for a moment here about APCO, because our connection, and I so appreciate the work that I've done and on very meaningful projects with APCO colleagues, and now part of the International Advisory Council. It really is an honor to be part of that with some amazing leaders from around the world.
I'm really proud of the work that you and our leaders are doing on the International Advisory Council. As you know, we have leaders from captains of industry and former officials from all parts, and very proud of the work that they do together with all of us at APCO to put ourselves in harm's way, as you know, and trying to tackle and address some of the most difficult challenges that we're facing. And it's a great privilege to be able to do that together with you and so many of the leaders on that council.
It's very nice of you. Let's talk about what we're here to discuss, which is workplace. And speaking of leaders, so for you as a leader, how do you make sure that you're supporting all of your colleagues at all levels, at APCO, at your workplace during these, let's just say right now we're in this evolving time of moving back to a good direction with mandates being released, but still there are challenges for you as a leader?
Of course. I think about BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. He issued a letter to all CEOs in January, and he said at the very start of that the nature of the relationship with the employee and the employer is the one that has most fundamentally changed in our lifetime. And he went on to advise the CEOs of the largest companies that work with BlackRock and in the world, that getting that relationship wrong has fundamental consequences. So I think as leaders, understanding that relationship has fundamentally changed, and what does it mean now in 2022 to be an employer and an employee, and what are the important parts of that? I think in helping our staff, we have to be flexible. We have to show compassion, and I think we also have to help them by creating opportunities that may not have existed before. That's what I've tried to do with the 200 plus men and women and the leaders that sit at APCO's headquarters, not too far away from here, as you know. And so
2 blocks.
That's right. And so the most difficult challenge here has been that we've been in a box. We've been and I thank Zoom and the other platforms for providing that, because we wouldn't have been able to get through the world as we know it now. But what it's also created is the importance of human connection and the power of human connection. So as we start to emerge from, if you will, the pandemic, hopefully, and go into an endemic, balancing between the virtual world, in person, and this hybrid workplace is going to be incredibly important. And I think the most important part of this equation, Jack, is going to be flexibility. How flexible are you going to be with your workforce? And in this relationship that, as I said, that Larry Fink says is the one that has fundamentally most changed, the one that is fraught with risk if you get it wrong.
Well, Licy, if people are the most important asset, as you're saying, how are you, and how will you be helping to make sure that people are being treated in an equitable way, and there's that kind of flexibility for employee needs, as well as the needs of the company?
Well, Jack, as you know, we are the only independent woman-founded, employee-operated public affairs firm in Washington, D.C., one of the largest in the globe. And so our DNA over the last almost 40 years since its founding has been our employees, has been families. And so for us, the pandemic didn't teach us the things that we already knew would be important to helping our people thrive and helping them to feel that they are included and have an equitable environment. We've been doing that for years. But I think with employers today, it's critical as we and our staff engage in this, that they create an environment where people can see and hear their voice, that they have those seats at the table, that they are empowered, that the leaders are helping to not just mentor, but to champion them, to create an environment, as I said before, that's flexible and one that allows them to feel that they are engaged and thriving in ways that they join that workforce to begin with. And there are countless examples over these last 2 years where employers have been inflexible. And I think you've read about some of those, and it becomes really challenging in this time where for certain parts of the population, if you will, and I think particularly women, it's been challenging. We know what the challenges have been in the labor workforce with regard to women. And so I think finding ways to help lift up your staff and make sure that you've created an inclusive, equitable environment, and that recruiting people into your staff, onto your teams, into your company is equally important to make sure that there's an environment there where they can see themselves and can be heard and have the opportunity to do good things.
So thoughtful, and I've seen that kind of flexibility, and boy, the challenges with the school shutdowns just has taken a balancing of work and home life to a whole other level, and the challenges that so many families, and like you said, especially women, have faced. Let's talk about the DC area, and since you're a leader, and APCO is with the Greater Washington Board of Trade, just a great organization that pulls together so many parts of the DC area. As you sort of look into your crystal ball, how do you see the workplace changing in this region, which is so dominated by the federal government, various state governments, tourism, associations, places that come to hotels like this one in order to, bring their membership together?
Well, first, let me say a great organization, and I know you have a lot of efforts and time with them as well. And I think the Greater Board of Trade is doing a wonderful job to lift up this question of what our area is going to look like, not just in the future when we eventually emerge from the pandemic, but what does it look like today, and how do we ensure that we have inclusive growth and inclusive economy moving forward? And I think they're doing that in great ways, and it's something that we care very deeply about, not just for the companies and leaders that we work with, but for us as people who live in Washington, D.C. And so the workplace here in Washington is in many ways not very different from the rest of the world. This flexibility, this inclusivity, the ability to ensure that your workforce has what it needs, but also that you're meeting them where they're at. And so whether that's the hybrid work schedule or if that's creating opportunities which now exist in sort of the workplace is sort of becoming an off-site, right? Purposeful and meaningful and impactful, and how are you helping your staff to be engaged in the work and helping them to thrive? This city and the organizations and the leaders around it, I know, are working very hard as we sit with them across industry to help get that relationship between employer and employee right. And I think that what one thing, Jack, that the pandemic has certainly taught us, and I wrote an article about this about a year and a half ago, is that old saying in terms of only when the tide goes out do you know who's swimming naked, that Warren Buffett talked about. Many of us already knew who was swimming naked before the pandemic, and the pandemic shone a light on many others, the socioeconomically disadvantaged, the lack of flexibility sometimes in the workplace, and so many other issues, economically, housing, education. These are all the issues that I know you care about, and many in this town are working to help address, not just here, but nationally. And so I think we have an opportunity to not go back to normal, but to create a normal that looks very different tomorrow than it does today.
Yeah, that's quite an image of the tide going out, but and also the workplace as offsite. That's I had not heard that expression. Maybe it's just me, but that's quite an image. That's the place where people can come together, but on any given day, people are getting their work done at home. As we sort of wrap up here, could you please just comment on what you see big picture as an employer here in the Washington area of not only opportunities for this kind of flexible workspace, but also challenges as well, because obviously there are challenges for employers and for companies.
Well, I think the opportunities to start there are that you have, as an employer, whether here or anywhere in this country, to think about what kind of workplace do you want to create for your employees? What kind of relationship do you want to have? And take the learnings from the last 2 years, if you will, and understand the table that you set and who sits there and how does it get designed and constructed. I think those are the questions that the Ubers and the Marriotts and so many of the largest companies that sit in Washington, D.C. Are grappling with. And there are some that are still trying to get it right, and there are some that I think have done a great job to create, as you just mentioned, as we talked about, the workplace as an offsite, as a place where you go with purpose, and you go because there's a reason for you to do that. Now, the downside, of course, is we got a lot of office space. There's a lot of retail, if you will, around here, and you have seen, as so many in this region have seen, that there's been a lot of businesses that have been impacted by that, and
which is tragic. I mean, it really is in a lot of urban areas in particular. Suburban areas seem to be doing fine, but a lot of businesses have been really hurt.
Yes, and think about it. When you lose a business in your community, it's not just the brick and mortar. It's the history, the legacy, the lives, the people, the memories that you had engaging, whatever it may be, the many restaurants that have closed here, the many stores, the many small businesses, and so many others. And so you lose fabrics, a piece of the fabric of your community when that entity is no longer there. And I think being able to recover as a region, as other parts of the country are trying to do, in a way that you don't lose what makes this town very great, which are the people and the moments that you create to do good, and the relationships that you form to try to make, as we've been talking here, tomorrow a little bit better than today. And so I hope, and I'm confident that as we start to emerge, especially at this time, that we can take what we've learned in the past and bring it forward in a way to help our workplaces thrive, help our communities thrive, help our businesses thrive, and help our region succeed in all the ways that we need it to be. And so, thank you.
So well said. And, I wasn't going to bring this up, but since we're here at the Willard, you think about entities and bricks and mortar that could have just gone away. Some already have, but this almost was.
That's right.
And you look at the history of Pennsylvania Avenue and this incredible hotel and complex. The fixtures were being sold and it was about to be torn down. And thankfully, due to commitment and leadership and foresight, it was maintained and now is one of the most historic, structures where so much has happened here.
That's right.
A hotel of presidents. Martin Luther King apparently wrote at least some of the I Have a Dream speech. All the history of Mark Twain, here at the Willard.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Willard is an institution in all its right, and of course the lobby and its famous origins for lobbying in this town. It is a institution like many others that made some very difficult decisions in order to try to keep moving, and all business and leaders had to try to do that. And it is, as you said, because of the commitment of leaders and others here that they were able to move forward. I would just say one other thing, Jack, that there's this old Chinese proverb that says, if you want to know where you're going and where your destination is, talk to the people who have come back from that. And so we know, if you will, where we've been in terms of the challenge and the difficulties that we face in this region from an economic standpoint and all of the implications of the pandemic. And my hope is that those of us like yourself and myself and others who've come back and said, there is a way here to go through challenge and to learn and make that road that we're heading to a little easier, a little bit more resilient, a little stronger for our communities and our businesses and our people. And so that's what gives me hope that the destination here is emerging, not just from the pandemic, but emerging into a locality or space, an economy, a society that says we are different and we're better because we went through that moment all together these last couple of years.
What a great way to end. We started by talking about sports and March Madness and ending by talking about this resilient road. And it's just a very hopeful way to end this really thoughtful discussion. So thank you so much, Licy, for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Jack. Glad to be here.